welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today is a very exciting day because today I'm going to start this new series, this Traveler app. This is basically related to travel app, right? So in this specific series, what we will learn, if we talk about the backend side, what we will learn is that we will implement the whole backend through Kotlin Ktor implementation. We will be using JWT for authorization. We will be using PostgreSQL or MySQL database as a database. We'll implement Swagger API documentation. From client perspective, what we will learn is we will implement the whole project in Compose Multiplatform. We'll implement the Android and iOS side of that. We'll again use Ktor for client side backend implementation. We will use coin dependency injection for both backend and the client side. We'll use room database, view models, navigation, shared element transition, and whatnot, a lot more. So that's pretty much an overview of what we are going to start in this series. And let's just not waste any time. What I'll do is that I'll straight away jump into the first part, like the first implementation of our project, and that is going to be the backend implementation. So in this specific video, what I'll do is that I'll create the basic structure. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, because this is going to be a really cool series and there are a lot more series that are coming your way. So subscribe to my channel, hit the bell icon, and let's just get started. So the first thing that I want to do over here is that I want to get to the start.ktor.io setting, and over here what you need to do is that you need to define some stuff like what I'll do is that I'll update the artifact for this code with fk, and then this project that I want to create is going to be Traveler. Okay, that's my name, and you can name it whatever you want, and that basically will help. Second thing is that I want JWT into this, which is okay. Along with that, I'll use status pages. I'll tell you why I need this status pages as well. We'll definitely be adding routing, which is already there. We'll use serialization. So Kotlin serialization is going to be there. We will be using content negotiation, so that is also should be added. And let's just use Swagger as well. So I guess that's pretty much for now. Let's just download it. And meanwhile I download that, I'll do one more thing. I'll go over here into this Kotlin multi-platform wizard, and this is for Kotlin multi-platform, and we need to select Compose for that. So shared UI with Compose, and also make sure to select server over here as well, and then you can download that as well. So now I have both the projects downloaded, and I'll just paste those. So basically the Traveler 2 is basically my backend one, and then Traveler 3 is basically the Compose application. So I'll just name like update it to name it as server, and what I'll do is that I'll extract it over. Now you can see that I have this server. I'll get rid of this. Then over here this is going to be traveler.cmp, which is means that Compose multi-platform, and then I'll extract that, and then okay. So now I have these two projects ready, right? When I open this Traveler, you can see that I have all these configurations over here, and when I open this server side, you can see that I have these kind of information. What I'll do is that I'll get this server side, and I'll just, let's say, paste it over here. And what it will do is that it will replace all these files that are available in this server that is basically created by default. The reason I did is that basically when you create a Ktor project from there, you can add those extra dependencies that I mentioned, right? With Kotlin multi-platform, it will just give you a dummy server with Ktor integration, and you won't be able to have the other stuff. So let's just, like, once I do that, what I'll do is that I'll go and open this project in my Android Studio. You can use IntelliJ for that as well. So once I open that, it will open in this structure, and it will take some time to load. So let's just wait till this project is built, and then we'll start exploring the project, and then maybe we can start implementing some stuff. Okay, so the first thing is that it failed to build, and the reason it's saying that the JVM have two different versions, like it is already on class path is on 20, but we are using 21, and that is because the server is slightly upgraded than the KMP one. So I've just have to replace this JVM to 2.0.21 so that it runs as expected. So now you can see that this project is built, and the first thing that I do normally is that I switch to project structure because that makes it easier for me. And you can see that we have this compose app where basically all the compose related code can be found, right? All the common section is there. We have this Android side section implementation over here in this. Then we have this server side implementation where we have all the server related code, and then this iOS is the native iOS section. And also we have this shared module where basically the Kotlin based implementation is there. So like the iOS specific implementation, the Android specific implementation, and things like that. Okay, so let's just close everything since our focus for today is on the backend. So we'll just try to explore how the backend looks. If you go to our server section, you'll see these things, right? And let's just open this application folder. Now, once I open this application folder, you'll see these kind of things. So it says configure HTTP, configure serialization, configure security, and configure routing. These are some plugins that basically we added. For example, for Swagger, it's just set this HTTP API. For routing, it's just basic routing that it has added. For security, it just created a couple of things, and for serialization, it says that okay, you can add it, or somehow I'm not sure why not able to do that. Also we'll add JSON into this as well. I think something is wrong with the dependencies that we have added, but we'll fix it. Okay, and then we have this thing. So basically what Ktor project means is that this is basically the main portion. From this is the starting point of your project. This is where when the server is executed. So from there, the next thing it does is that it calls this module. And now from where this module is being called, if you go to the resource and open application, this is the section. This is basically the module, that application module that are defined over here, which means that this will be called, which means when this is called, it will load these kind of things. Now, since we don't have the JSON implementation, if I look into my build.gradle file, you'll see that we might not have, we have the content negotiation, but I guess we need to add the JSON implementation for that as well. And the first thing that I want to get rid of is that I don't want this, right? And what I'll do is I'll go to this Gradle. You can see that it has 2.0.21, and I don't want that. I want to go with 2.0.20 because you remember that was the compatibility issue. So let's just keep the compatibility the way it is, and then for this we'll use this one. Okay, now all these things are there. Now what we need is that we need to, there are two ways, like you can use it this way, and you can also use the Gradle, the lib.version that basically is available for there, that you can see by default there are some logbacks are there, there are called Ktor server core, netty, and test are there. So let's just add these into it so that you don't have to replace with the existing. So make sure to replace with the existing if like there is two options for you. If it's the first one, you can just it says existing is there, so we'll use the existing. Just don't have to replace with existing version. Okay, so now this is done. Our basic structure of our code base, everything is there. It's just a couple of things that we have done. I've just switched to the normal file implementation so that everything is there. Okay, so these things are done. So the first thing that I want to verify if I have the JSON for serialization, which is not there. So that is one thing that I was missing, and you need to make sure to have this if you want to set the content negotiation. And now what is content negotiation? What does it mean? I'll explain that. We have explained it in our previous project as well, but let's just do it again. And what basically this mean is that when you set the serialization over here, this means that how your like the project, the system, how the system is going to communicate. Is it going to communicate through JSON, or if it's like some other way, like, and if you have want to communicate through XML and stuff like that. So that basically defines. And since we need a JSON over here for our basic communication, so I'll use this JSON as for over here, and that is something that you need to do. Once you do that, you'll have this setup. Now the serialization is done. For now, I'll just try to explain a little what the JSON security or the JWT is. This specific section means that okay, this is like whenever a token is created, it require a couple of things, right? So the first thing is the audience. Audience means the user of that token. Then the domain, it can be any provider, like in our case the Traveler app is the provider, so if we have a domain for that, we'll just use that. The realm is basically just the name of the app, and you can use whatever name that you want. The important thing over here is the secret, which basically that is important because this is how the token is being encrypted, right? So the secret can be anything. You can create your own random token, or you can use some third-party services to create a random token for you. So basically, it's a combination of different. It's just like a password or a hash that you create. For now, we don't have any specific requirement over here. It's just for understanding, so we can just use anything that we want. So let's say secret ABC123 and stuff like that. So this is basically the key that will basically encrypt and decrypt our token. Okay. Now these kind of things will be like these specific values will be required some in different other locations as well. So what I'll do is that I'll just get these from here and I'll paste it over here as constant. Okay. The reason why I added them on top is that I'll be using these from different locations. Ideally, this secret and these kind of values should come from environment variable, but since it's very start of our setup, so I'll not go through those ways, and I'll maybe explain it once we have much better grip on that, right? And what over here this authentication means is that basically this will install the authentication in the system. And then over here this JWT, we also want to add this specific name to this, because based on this name, what I'll do is that I'll restrict some endpoints, right? And what does JWT mean is that basically it's an authentication way. So like there are some endpoints that you want to protect so that they cannot be accessible publicly without any token, and only those users that have signed into your system can access that, right? So basically we'll be using this JWT for that, and then it's just a verifier, and inside this verifier we define all these properties that basically I've explained on top over here. And then over here it's just a validation principle that it sets. So this is basically the JSON JWT, right? And now I guess we are ready. The first thing that I would like to do is that inside this routing, we have this, right? I'll get over here and I'll create an authenticate endpoint, which means that it's just a random endpoint that I have added. And what I'll do is that I'll define this name. This is basically the auth JWT that I explained that basically we require. So this is what I have done. Pretty straightforward, nothing fancy, nothing no stuff like that. So what I'll do is that I'll show you if I access this specific section, this will be accessed, but when I try to access this, it will fail. And now let's just go back to our application, and then inside this main, let's just run this. Now I have opened this Postman as well, where basically we will test it. Now it just built. Hopefully this will run as well. Yes, you can see that it just ran successfully. Now if I try to access this, you can see that it's a 200 okay, and also the hello world can be accessed, right? And what if I want to access the protected or like the authenticated endpoint? So I'll just go there and I'll add this slash authenticated, and now you can see that it says 401 unauthorized, which means that this is protected through a token and it requires a token for me. Since I don't have a token right now, I'll just leave it over here. So the basic structure for this specific implementation is done. Now the next thing that we want is that we want to integrate some database to the backend, right? Without database, it doesn't make sense. And for database, there are like different ways, as I mentioned in the start of the project. You can use Postgres, you can use any kind of SQL for this, and I'll be using for locally I have MySQL server set up, so I'll use that locally. And for that, the first thing that we need to do is that we will create a data package, and inside data package, let's just create database package. And now over here, what I'll do is that I'll create a Kotlin class and call it database vector. Okay, and then this is going to be an object for me. And also let's just create the init function for this. I'll explain what we need to do over here. Second thing I need to do over here is that I'll create a package with tables. And over here, what I'll do is that I'll create the tables, right? Since the user is going to be one of my table that I want to create, that is something that I'll do. Now I have these, like I have set up these things, but I don't have any dependencies for the database that I have added. So what I'll do is that I'll add those dependencies. I'll go over here and lib.yaml and let's just call it database and add these things. Now you can see that it asks me to have some values for this, so I'll just use that. I need to add these version as well, so I'll just add those version to this, and now I can access this. So let's just try to add the dependencies. For that I have already set up everything, so I'll just directly use it. Now let's call it database. Okay, so the database is done, and now let's just sync it. Okay, so the database dependencies are added. Now let's just get back to our tables class, and now over here what I'll do is that I'll extend it from the expose table, right? And over here we'll define the name of the table. In our case, it's going to be this. Okay, and now over here what we have is that we have ID as an auto increment, then we have an email, we have a password. I guess this is a little bit of a lot of information that I don't need. Then we have name. So like these three things are enough. And one more thing over here that we need is that we need to define the primary key as well. So the primary key is going to be this. So this means that this ID is there, then we have this email, the length, let's just add 255 to be sure that it's there, and also this ID is going to be long. Let's just not use integer, and it will auto increment. So this ID is going to be auto incremented, and this email is going to be unique. You can also use the email as a primary key as well. So it's basically totally depends on how you structure your application. Okay, so our database table is done. Now the next thing is that we need to define on how to create our database, right? And I guess for that what I'll do is that I'll go with database dot connect. Now these are the things that are like important in our case. For example, if you have the URL, whatever URL you have, it's going to be important in this case. So like if you have a Postgres SQL or you have a MySQL, and since I mentioned that I have a MySQL, so I'll just copy that URL that I have for my database that I've created. So I'll just replace it with this, right? That's one thing. And then I'll also have like a name it. So I'll just call this Traveler DB. So this is my SQL URL. Then this driver is important. Driver mean that how the data is going to be accessed to which class, and since we added the dependency for both of them, so I'll be using the driver for MySQL. We'll be using Postgres when we deploy this project, because on Heroku I have access to the Postgres server database, and now this user and password should be, and this is basically what we have. Second thing is that we will be using a transaction, and then in this we will be using schema util.create, and inside this create we will be passing user table. This means that this will help us create all the tables. Next thing is that you can also define the default isolation level for that. So what we can do is that we can go for transaction manager dot manager dot default isolation level is equals to transaction dot serializable. This basically helps you execute, like, get rid of a lot of funky stuff that database does. Since we are just going, like, starting it, it's good to have this. Okay, so now our database configuration is done, our table is ready, and now what we need to do is that we'll go over here into this project, and now over here let's just call it database factory dot connect. Let's make it this way. Okay, so now the function in it is there. Now the database has been initialized. The next thing that we need is, now we want our register endpoint. So basically our the basic structure is done. We have integrated the database as well now, but now it's the real time. Now it's the time to test how the stuff is done and how we can access it. So the first thing for this whole thing, if you want, like, go for user implementation, I want is routes, right? And inside routes, what I'll do is that I'll create a new Kotlin class, and now I'll name it user routes. Okay, so this basically is going to be the routes for where I'll be defining all the user related stuff. Okay, now I'll create a function route. Route is basically the default routing class that we use, and along with that we'll define the user route. It's just an extension of what the route is, right? And now inside that, what we will do is that we'll create another route. This is basically going to be the path for us. Let's say if we want just the default base URL along with users, and then inside that what we can do is that we can define the post method for register and login. So what this means is that, now let's say if I have a local host as a backend, so I'll just use local host that 8080. This is basically when you run your code locally. So this is basically the base URL, and then if with this it will be looking something like this, or if you go for login it will look like this, right? So these two are like that, but if you don't want to have this, you can just you avoid using this and then directly access it. You can keep it empty and then /register, which means that it will jump to this section. Okay, so we have registered and login done, but what we need to do is that we want to do some actual stuff over here on how we are going to register a user or how we want to log in a user. So basically what we need, if I explain a little bit, what we need is that in case of register, we'll access some data from the client side that is going to contain an email, a password, and a name for that user, right? And once that data is received, we'll store it into database. If there is no user available, if there is already a user available, we'll throw an error. If not, we'll store that, and in return we'll generate a token for that user and return it to that user. So that's how we want. So enough talk again. Let's just create another package and call it model. And now inside this model, create another Kotlin class and call it user request. Okay, this is going to be the class, the data class, if I'm not wrong. So we'll be using a data class for this. The reason for data class, because definitely we just want to get some data from the user, and that is email, password, and name. These are the three things that we require, and make sure to make this class serializable as well. So this is important. So once we do that, this means that this is done. Along with that, I'll also create another user class that is going to be a user. This is also going to be data class, and this should contain two things. So like something like this. This is basically what we will be returning to the user. I guess that's done. Now, one way is we add all our implementation into this. That will just mess up everything and the code structure will look really bad. The other way is to do it through repositories and services. Okay, so we have like explored repositories and why we use it. Basically, help us do the communication with the database and things like that. So I'll just create another repository module, and also along with that I'll create services. The services are responsible to communicate with this routing section, and this services will go to repositories and access whatever is required and stuff like that. So just create a service class, or let's just create repository class first, and let's call it user repository. Okay, you can further like complex the structure if you want, like maybe implement the interfaces implementation, add a domain module into this and things like that, but I'll just try to keep it simple for now. So user repository, and then the first function that I want is that find user by email, right? And this is something that it will be doing. In return, it is supposed to return a user to me. Second thing is that I want to create a user, and in that case we'll be using a user request and we'll get this, right? But how are we supposed to do that? And make sure to make them suspend functions as well, so that they run in the background. Okay, so how are we going to do that, right? So for first thing is that we need to check in the database. So to check in the database, what we need to do is that what we will do is that we'll say vol user is equals to user table dot select. This means that this is going to be the select query, and the inside this curly braces will define the condition. So the user table dot email means if this column value equals to email, which means the specific value. This is just like select static. If I explain it over here, it is just like select is static from user where email is equals to email. So basically this is the query, and this is how we have done it. And the next thing that I want is that I want to map that, right? What I mean by map is that over here what it will do is that now inside this it will give me something like this, the username, and this is basically the IT is the it was like result raw, on whatever the raw it returns, and it from there what we will do is that we'll just define the column. So whatever column value we want for since the user require a name, email and ID, and so we will just follow the same pattern and get access from that data. And once that is done, what I'll do is that I'll call it single or null, which means that if the data is available, will return a user, else will return null. And then what I'll do is that I'll return the user. So this means that this is how it will add the data. Now the next thing over here, which is again really important, and that is basically is that we will use for id is equals to user table dot insert, and then again this is basically the same thing, but this time what we do is that the name goes to the name, emails it is just the reverse of what we did previously. We were getting the value for those table, and now what we do is that we add the columns, and on the right side we define the value. So like the name should go to the name column, email should go to the email, and stuff like that. And once you do that, this means that you got the user ID, and then what we will do is that we'll just return whatever user. So if the ID is like successfully inserted without any error, it will just do, else it will crash, so which will take us to another separate level. So yes, that's it. Now you can see we have this find by user email and then create user implementation done. And now I'll go to my service class, and then inside the service class I'll create another Kotlin class, and I'll call it user service. Okay, so basically this user service should contain a user repository as a function. Okay, and now what we will do is that we will create a function create user over here as well, and this is supposed to contain a user request and something like this. Okay, now the important thing is that it should not be returning a user, but it should, let's say, return a user response, something else. So I'll go over here and then I'll create another content class. It's going to be a data class, and let's call it a user response, which means that there will be two things. There will be one user for that, and along with that will also return a token to the user. So that's something we have done over here, and that is going to be user response like this. Now over here, this create user means, so let's just make it suspend function as well. So this basically user repository, the create user will just help us create a user, right? But let's just say wall existing user is equals to user repository dot find user. So basically what I did is that first I check if the database has the existing user. If the existing user is there, we'll just throw an exception saying that the user with this email is already exist, right? In that other case, what we'll do is that we'll create the user and then we'll create another user response and then token. But before doing anything like that, before like creating this whole thing over here, like we pass this password, what I want is that I want to hash those passwords. This is not the good idea to just store plain password in the database, right? So what we need to is we need to encrypt those passwords with some specific key there. So that's what we will do. So what I'll do is that I'll this user copy that, and then password should equals to the hashed password, right? And since we don't have anything, I'll just create another function over here and I'll call it hash password, and that is going to be something like this. And over here I'll just use that user request dot path. Okay, so what it does is just copy and create another copy, and I just update the password for that. And over here what we will do is that we will update or hash the password for this specific thing. So basically what I'll do is that I'll like hash it through this message digest and something like this. So basically it will just hash it. For now, let's just use the same code for hashing, and I guess now this function is something we can use. And another thing is that this token, since the token is something that we would like to use, so we also want to do that. So I'll create another function and let's just call this create JWT token, and it should return a email, right? So we will pass an email to this and create a JW token for that. Okay, so to do that, what we will do is that we'll return JWT dot create, and then along with that we'll define a couple of things that we have. So sorry, import this. Now if you remember, we created this audience for JWT. We also had the, what was that, JWT domain, right? This email is again the same thing, and this expiration is something that you need to define. For example, we want to make it for 24 hours, so this is going to be something like this, if I'm not wrong, into 1000L. I guess that's okay. Yes, it should return a string function. So what it does is that basically 24 hours, then hours are converted into minutes, and then into second, and 1 second is equals to 1000. And then this secret is also again, that is a JWT secret that's available over there. So that's pretty much what I have done. And now this create token means that over here what we will do is that we'll create user.email. And I guess that's pretty much a lot of things that we have done. So we did all these things, and now I'll go to the user routes, and over here we'll just create wall response is equals to uh, this is going to be users service that we need. So we'll just import that, and I'll make a wall. Oh, sorry, it's a function. So we'll use this, and now we'll use this user response dot create user. And the next thing is that we don't have the request object, right? So how do we access that? To access that, we have this call, a routing call object that is available inside the route. So we'll use call dot receive, which means that we are receiving something, and that is going to be user request. So this means that we will get a request from the user, and that will be parsed into this, right? So we'll pass this request into this, and now just response HTTP status code OK, and then this response is going to be user response, which is fine. Okay, just make sure to select a correct response for that. And now I guess that is done, and what else we need is that we need to use this user routes inside this application, inside this configure routing class over here. So over here what I'll do is that I'll just call this user routes, okay, and import that. And since it's require a user service, we'll user service, and inside the user service we define a user repository. So we'll add this. We will fix this once we implement coin into this, but for now let's just do it this way. Now one more thing, and if you remember, if we go to this user service section, we are throwing this illegal argument exception. So we need to catch it somewhere, because without that it will just crash and the system will return 500. We don't want, in this case we want to return 400, right? So for doing that, we'll go back again to our plugins and the routing section, and you can see this status pages have these exceptions that we can define. So now I'll define another exception, right? And that exception is going to be illegal, right? Something like this. We can get rid of extra stuff like that, and we can just respond with something like this. This is not, sorry, it should not be like that. It should be respond http status code dot bad request comma, we'll just return the cause, and this is something like this. Yeah, so now it will just return it. And now let's just run this whole a lot of stuff that we have done and see if everything that we created is actually working. So I'll open my Postman. Okay, it's failed to load, and the reason is that it says that Travenor database is not available, and one reason is that I don't have that database, so I need to create that database first. So if you are like over here, what you need to do is that you need to define this and apply, close. So now I have just created my database. I missed to create that database into my MySQL, and now this time when I run it, it will run. Okay, so now I have this base URL, it's over here. I'll go to my Postman, and I'll create another section. Let's just create a post call it this. Then this is going to be user/register. And now the next thing is, make sure to go to body and select raw, and from over here you need to define this JSON, right? And now inside this JSON, for email, let's just call it Furkan at codewithfk.com. Password is going to be 1 2 3 4 5 or whatever, and last thing is going to be name, that is going to be the card. I guess that's pretty much what we have, and now let's just pass it and see what happens. So when I send these values, it says that the system was not able to parse it, right? Somehow there was some sort of issue with it, with parsing it. Okay, so I guess there is one other mistake that I have done, most probably is the reason for this. And you can see that we have not added the serialization to this module, which is important. So what I'm gonna do is that I'll use it like this into this, and now we'll try again. This time hopefully it will be able to process this and convert it into a JSON on how we want it. Let's just try again. Okay, so there is just one more silly mistake that I did, and to fix that, what we need to do is that you need to go to your repository class. There is my repository class. You need to go to the user repository and make sure to run it through transaction, because that's what it requires, right? So, and once you run a transaction, this is basically what you need to do. You can either just get rid of this section like this, or use it this, and you need to do the same thing for this as well. And in this case, you will just return the user. So once you do it this way, hopefully we'll be able to fix this issue. Now again, let's just rerun this code. Everything is running. Hopefully this time we'll be able to do this. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm really sorry. I just have to, I missed this again. This user response should also be a serializable, and that's why it was serializable, should be there, because this is what we are returning, right? And again, this, that's, I guess that's why. Now we need, if we run it, this everything should work. Now I'll do another user and then I'll send this message, and now you can see that we have accessed it, everything. And now if you remember, we had this authenticated. Now when I try to access this, it says 401, but now let's say add some authorization to this, right? So adds authorization, and over here let's call it bearer, and then pass this token. And now when I access this, this is being accessed through this token, and this basically proved the way I explained that if we pass it to the token, so like if I take off the token, it will not be accessible and throw 401, but if it's with the token, it will just do it this way. And that's, I guess, pretty much for today's video. In this specific video, what we did is that we created the basic structure. It took some time to set up all those kind of dependencies and like different things, and then we created our first endpoint that is basically used for register. In the next video, what we will do is that we'll implement the login endpoint as well, and then we'll jump to the client side. And from client side, the first thing that we will do is that we'll set up the basic structure. We'll set up the Ktor implementation, we'll set up the coin implementation and things like that. And after that, we'll start implementing the UI for our logins and register. And once we implement this whole structure, we'll jump to the next feature. So again, if you please do like the video. If you have any questions, suggestion, comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. So I'll see you in the next video. So till then, have a great day. Happy coding. Bye.